Hi, my name is Ali Bernath. We are here with the directors and creators of Shimshin. We have some questions that we are going to ask. What's so special about Shimshin? Why would you use him for the video?
Because Shimshon is the coolest story in Jewish history. He is a real Jewish superhero, and he gives off a very nice message that is relatable to kids nowadays.
Tzvi's the writer, so what Tzvi's able to do is to take out certain points or certain messages that Shimshon stood for, or that we were trying to convey, or that Hashem was trying to convey to Shimshon, and pull those out and make them realistic to everybody who's there. And Tzvi's job, besides writing what the story, because I'm sure lots of kids had their Rebbe tell the story, what the video tries to do more than just tell the story is convey a message and explain what the story of Shimshin was, rather than just the story, but as a lesson that we could learn from.
And the message from Shimshon was a message of how any talent you have is from Hashem.
Did you play Kugelach as a kid?
Again, for me.
You play for Kugelach?
I played a lot of Kugelach. I still play Kugelach.
You play Kugelach?
Of course. I mean, did you play Kugelach as a kid?
I was never good at it. The hand coordination, I never was really good at it.
One of my favorite moments in creating Shimshin was trying to explain to the animators how Kugelach works. And there's this great video that Tzvi had to, he's on the floor and creating this juggling kaif. We actually, we were so fascinated by it. You know that it's a really ancient game. Kugelach is very old. It's
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it's one of the oldest games.
It's from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
In the 80s.
And that's how old it is. It's ancient. Look at us.
I still play Kugelach. I still play Kugelach with my kids.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember thinking about it in my head, there's gonna be this Kugelach championship. It's gonna look so amazing and so real. So it's amazing to see it actually happening.
One of the things that was interesting was Kugelach is normally played on the floor, but they put it on a table. It makes the game much harder.
Oh, really?
It does. It also limits your, for example, when you're playing bridges, it limits how far you could push a kugel.
How long does it take to write the script?
It depends on the length of the film, right? So Shimshin was something like 40 minutes, something like that, 30 to 40 minutes. So that took, I would say it takes me a week to pull off 5 pages, something like that. But then there's rewrites. So the way it works is 1 page per minute, typically.
That you'll be on a video.
Right.
But how long does it take you to write a page?
Well, so it doesn't. The way the writing works is in the beginning there's structuring. First of all, you start off. You want to decide on a message. Whether that if it's a story not like Shimshin where you're coming up with it out of your own mind, you begin with that message. Anytime you're writing a story, because you want it to be more than just something you watch of someone crossing the street. You want it to have meaning. But with Shimshin, I had to look in the story and sit down for a while, and I discussed with many people what is the main message of Shimshin, what could come out of it, and different people had different ideas, and eventually it settled on a very simple one.
What would another message of Shimshin be?
That you shouldn't get your hair too long.
Yeah, what is with the braided hair?
No, sir, not a good idea. No, I'm not a fan of it. You could, if you don't want people to start up with you, you could
become a Nazir. All right, so how long does it take? A month, 2 months, 3 months?
So in a case of Shimshin, it took probably 4 months, 3-4 months, something like that. From beginning, because that includes structuring, character creation, and then writing, and then making sure that I had it. Yeah.
Right, changes and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, it's a long time.
What's your favorite part of the video?
I'm really, really happy with some of the voices that I did. And it's funny because sometimes when you create a voice in your mind, so when I'm making a voice in my head, I have to actually picture that person, and I have to actually give that person a whole dynamic and motions, like the person really exists in my head. And so there's no question in my mind that Walit was one of the greatest voice acting things that I've ever done. I am so happy with how it came out, and seeing it in the final product of Shimshin, when I finally saw it, was just really something special.
I disagree, actually. I think your greatest voice was that second, the drunk guard, and that's my favorite part. We were in the studio, and he pulled off.
Guard.
There's this guard.
He's called in the script the drunk guard.
No, he's called. He was just called guard number 2 or something.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He's called
Guard 2.
Guard 2. And we didn't have anyone to do it. So Swee's like, why don't, so a few people tried it and it just didn't work. And then Sue was like, why don't you try it? I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll just go up there and try it.
Can you sing Happy Birthday in Waleed's voice?
What? Okay, let's try this. Okay. By the way, I have to like picture him in my head in order to get the voice. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
I was gonna say you need to laugh.
I know.
I was waiting
because that is the Waleed signature.
Character.
Yeah. And by the way, and that is like he has those really funny hand things, and you're going to get the answer from Shimshin.
Can you explain what a juggling kaif is?
A juggling kaif is suppose there's a kugel here and a second kugel. So you throw the first one up. While that one's in the air, you juggle by throwing the second one, and then you would catch the first one, and you have to claw the second one. That's the kaif.
So it's kind of like a juggle.
It is a juggle.
Oh, you have to juggle it.
You have to
actually juggle
That's
it.
probably why I was never good at kugel. I can't juggle.
But that's probably why we are really good at kugel.
And by the way, both of them have that in common. Zami and Svi both juggle. Yeah.
So you should not be allowed to play kugelach if you're a juggler.
Or you should already have like a certain advantage.
Or
It should be
you're in
already
the majors.
Exactly.
You're in
Like
the kugelach.
you go right to like the 15th chelik.
You have to play with your toes.
Right. There you go.
Is Mr. Dubrow named after anybody?
Yeah.
Who's Mr. Dubrow?
Mr. Dubrow, I actually voice him. He's the old man, and he's named after my grandfather.
Can you do the Mr. Dubrow voice?
Mr. Dubrow! I try to make my voice shaky and old. Oh, right? He is my grandfather. Get me a ramp. My grandfather, Jack Dubrow, was a World War II veteran. He served in the Canadian military where he met my grandmother. And
But did he need the ramp?
Is this a real story?
years later, he met a child who had lost his kugelach.
And he needed a ramp.
He needed a ramp.
Right. And he got a ramp.
We're not even sure if this is a true story or not, because I know Jack, I remember him. So I know he really existed.
He really existed. He did not need a ramp.
This was a family production, really, in terms of audio, right? Your mother Olav Shalom was the bubby. No, not the bubby.
She was Serach. She was this magical. She was this magical kind of the person who takes them back in time.
That was amazing because Serach Bas Asher, right? She was the one who like never passed away, so like there was like that magical element to her. That's why her name is Serach.
Right.
Look at that. Are there more stuff?
And it was really special because she just recently passed away. It was nice to hear her voice. Yeah.
Why was the fox named at the end of the video Mitinti?
They had such a good time.
He wanted to cling to something in the past. In his experience, in his story. I chose Mitinti really just because it's a silly sounding name. It didn't work having Waleed. It wouldn't work calling the fox Shimshon or one of the Jewish names.
Right,
so I thought it has to be one of the Plishti names, and calling it Delilah wouldn't work. So Mitinti just sounded.
Right.
Where did you get the Plishti names from?
That is actually, there's a story there. So I wanted to get everything as factual as possible. So with this film, I did a ton of research in all the different midrashim. I went to the library in Montreal, pulled out tons of svarim. Started off with Mayam Loyas, but then it took off from there. And but when it came to Plishti, I don't know much about Plishti history, so I went into a deep dive there. Most of it online, but some of it I again went to the library. And I wanted Plishti names. I wanted them to be actual names from that time. And I came across somewhere online some scientific paper where someone had studied all these names, and that's where I had to pay a subscription to read this paper. It was all about Philistine names, and I found Walit, and it just sounded like the bad guy that it would be called Walit. Although, if with our pronunciation, it would probably be Valit, right? There's no wa in.
But then I would have done him Russian.
Right, if you would have running.
And Metinti, all the Plishti names.
Hold on a second. Walit wasn't really his name?
There is no source that says a name for any of the Plishtim and Shimshin.
Oh, really?
Shimshin story.
In Tanakh, there's no...
In the Shimshin story. In Tanakh, I can't think of anywhere where it might say a Plishti. We know that I believe that their idol was Dagon, but I'm not sure if that's actually in the text. That may have been Midrashic. Something that was interesting, though, that was accurate was that archaeologists found a seal that they believe may have been Shimshin's seal, and that was in there. It's a man battling a lion, and
the seal, that's the logo.
Yes, the logo. That actually
That's Shimshin's seal.
Actually,
they believe.
If I can really be frank, that was my favorite part.
What?
I love the way that kind of whole beginning really comes together with the music and the feel and the logo and that seal. It's really special.
Right.
That was really great.
Yeah.
Why was Shimshin's hair braided?
Oh.
Why was Shimshin's hair braided?
Yeah, why was his hair braided?
Was it braided?
So it was braided according to a medrash. I don't remember which one. Maybe when
Tell
this
us
is
which
edited,
one right
it could
now.
be written right down here. It could be written.
You see it right here,
Midrash
it's right here.
Seichel Tov, right? Lamed
Do you
Zion.
see the thing right there?
Do you have notes on this?
Somewhere, yeah. I have notes.
So it
on
was braided.
It was braided. I remember it.
Was it a 3
Because you
braid or a
asked
6
me,
braid?
you actually asked me because the animators wanted to know if it was in fact braided or not. So I had to look again. That's how I.
No, but one of the interesting things about that is with the animation is that the animators originally did Shimshin as the superhero, and then we had to go back. Remember that? We had to go back and make him limp.
Right. Where was that? Where's that from?
I actually the limping. That's very. I think even Rashi brings down that medrash of how he limped, and it plays a big part of the story as to why wouldn't Bnei Yisrael follow this really strong, cool guy, and it could be because he's walking around in a limp. He doesn't look like someone you would follow, but that's real. The sound guy had this pad, so we wanted to create his footsteps. We wanted to create his footsteps being uneven. And so all the footsteps are actually my fingers going boom, 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 boom.
What a lot of people don't realize is that every single sound that you hear on that video, someone had to make it.
Right.
It doesn't just happen. You don't just have a sound. That sound had to be created because the real animated characters don't make any sounds.
Right.
Why did Shimshin have to carry the gate all the way up that mountain?
Why did Shimshin
That's a
have
good
to carry
question.
that?
Yeah.
I don't know if he had to carry it all the way up that mountain. It was sending a message. It was sending a message that he walked in the city, he picked up the gate, walked right into enemy territory. What he's doing is he's goading the enemy. He's saying, I'm still around and you cannot do anything to Bnei Yisrael.
Stop me. Did they lock the gate? Is that why they locked the gate after him?
They locked the gate when he was
he's
inside the city. Yeah. Yeah. No, but part of it is he is lame on both legs. Not only is he carrying this massive gate, but with a weird gait, right? G-A-I-T. He's walking in a weird,
funny way.
He's limping all the way, and it's something I forget the exact distance. It might be 50. I don't know if I myself was going to say.
Yeah,
But I don't
not
think that's
that
that
far,
big.
not that far.
It was from Hebron all the way. It's basically from Gaza to Hebron, which is quite a distance.
It's a long distance.
Why were you so many different voices in Shimshin?
Because he's the most talented person who does voices and imitation of people and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Right?
that's exactly it. You could have probably done all the voices of the entire.
But he was nice enough to let other people do it.
Exactly.
He let other people do it.
right now.
Other people, it couldn't. We had to find some other people. Most of them.
What does it take to make a 3D animation?
So a 3D animation is it's complicated and takes a long time. So it requires a team of people to really come together and work together in putting together all the different parts that 3D animation requires. So usually when you do 2D animation, there's usually the person that draws the characters and then the person that animates it. With 3D, there's a lot of steps in between from the person that creates the model of the person to the person that maybe will rig the model, which means give him hands and make him movable, to the person that will create the textures or the lighting, and then create the buildings and the environments. All that gets done not with drawing, but almost like a model. And then once that's in the computer, then you can start animating and moving things around and lip syncing. And then after that, you render it.
To give an example, an animator, instead of just drawing a shoe, he actually creates something on computer that can be turned, can look like this shoe. This has a different texture and different feel and different movement than this, right? So, and the same thing, this has different movement. Let's try, for example, if I smack it over his head, we'll see what.
Are you really holding a 3D animation?
Yeah, no, but this could be a 3D animation. It could, the idea being once, so that's only the shoe, and then you create an entire person, and you have how everything moves, and you try to make it as natural as possible, and that takes time. Every movement, when a person's gonna walk, to have that their shoe moves and that this flops around, that takes time.
What were your favorite parts of making the video?
For me, it was Avi Tansky, who played Shimshon, and he was brilliant. The first time he stepped in front of that mic, and he embodied Shimshon. He does. It really sounds like a real superhero who is powerful, strong, and yet also has that quality of being a little lonely. He was able to capture Shimshon better than, it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yeah, did a really good job.
What a lot of people don't realize is even more important than the visuals, the audio is such an important part of an animation, is having really good audio with really good and very realistic feel to it.
Yeah. I would say my favorite part of creating Shimshon was when Shimshon pushes down the pillars and he says, Zachreinina v'chatzkeinina. In my head, I knew the song from Dov Shurin, so I kept thinking in my head, when we end off, we're going to end off almost on a sad note because Shimshon dies in the rubble, but he did so much, and his legacy, and the fact that the Plishtim were afraid of him for so long after, and he was such a powerful force that it sounds funny to say that, but that adding that little part at the end was like, for me, the icing on the cake, that it ends off with such a, like, on such a high. That for me was the most exciting part.
So often I think about that tefillah of Shimshon, like it's a real tefillah. It's from the most depths, the deepest part of his being. You see his whole soul really coming into it. And Avi Tansky did an amazing job just embodying, like you really feel at that moment, at the end, where like that tefillah, that's Hashem, that's Shimshon, that's a perfect moment, like what we imagine Ne'ilah should be like.
And maybe another message could be tshuva. Right, he does a full tshuva to the point where
you really feel that. You really feel that.
Yeah, you feel that, but he realizes that, wow, I messed up, or I got lost in my own message, and I didn't fully trust in Hashem, and he asks one more time for Hashem and Hashem gives him that, the I don't know if it's called mechila, but he grants him that one more time, that achapam hazeh.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
What was your favorite?
For me, when Tzvi and I wrote Young Avram 15 years ago, knowing that there's a reality that when I read it, I don't have that imagination, and now you can see the shofet come to life, the story comes to life, and it's just such a great joy for me as a parent, as a rebbe, as a teacher, to be able to say, look now, this is the story, and there's something real, and you can picture it in your mind, and you can experience that. And I want to tell you the truth, I have learned the story of Shimshon my whole life, but there's so many things I think about with the story of Shimshon now that I never thought about before because of this.
Because we spent 4 months by finding the message.
Well, the message, I didn't spend 4 months finding the message.
7 years. He spent 7 years defining.
No, the message was a good week or two, and once I figured it out, it was then about structuring it and building it in a way that the message is delivered.
Right.
So there's a story going on outside of two kids who go back in time and need to find their way back. But then inside, there's a story of also a kid who lost his Zaydis Kugelach, and he believed that those Kugelach were his. They were the reason why he was so good, and he needs to recognize that it has nothing to do with items, with physical items.
Right.
It's Hashem.
Right.
What is the research done on Shimshin?
What's the research done?
The research, so it starts off with the Mayam Layas, because that's a compilation of many midrashim, and it's easy. I go through it in English, and I take notes, handwritten, very small. I have a whole bunch of papers. I have a characters
Should we think
notes.
Rabbi Yaakov Kuli and Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan?
No, but I have characters notes. So, for example, Shimshon was lame. I'm not going to put that in the story. Lame meaning
You
unable
have to
to walk.
explain maybe what disability. Lame is a disability.
Yeah, it's a disability where he was unable to
He
walk.
didn't walk straight.
Yeah, so both his legs were not, he wasn't walking as. So when I find that, I put it under character. That this is about Shimshon. When I find something, let's say, I find that in archaeology, this is not midrashic, but I also do research trying to find archaeological or stuff from that other people have found about the story. So when I find that we mentioned when I found the stamp, that was something that I would file under visuals, right? Because there's visuals, that is a specific visual. So suppose, this isn't there, but if it would say the size of the gate, I would write down the size of the gate has to be this. If it said how tall Shimshon was, I would write it down. And then there's the story itself. So they go into kind of 3 separate papers, and it starts off with the Me'am Layas, but then I go to the Jewish Public Library in Montreal, and they have a full bookshelf of different midrashim, and I pull out, I just pull them off the shelf, all of them, and I go through the story through each one. I'll go through Medrash Rabbah, I'll go through Tanchum, I'll go through the Medrash Rabbah, Medrash Hagadol. I'll go through all the midrashim that are on that story.
How much more information do you get from midrashim than you do from the actual story in Tanakh?
It depends on the story.
Let's say for this one.
For this one, a lot.
Yeah.
A lot more. Well, no, not that much, because the story is basically there. The story is straightforward in Shimshin in Tanakh, and I encourage everyone to really read it in the Tanakh, and you'll be able to see that there are bits and pieces that are added. But young Avraham doesn't exist in the entire Torah. There is nothing about, so using that as an example.
Yeah, it was all midrashim. When we wrote Young Avram, it was all midrashim. Yeah, we had lists and lists of midrashim. We basically took each midrash and we wrote it out as a line on the papers just to have a list of midrashim.
We typed it up. I have a file somewhere.
Yeah. What about the jokes? Where are those from?
The jokes come.
Which midrash are those from?
Medrash Tzvi.
The jokes just come.
And as a follow-up to that, are you making any other videos?
I will let you answer that. We are. The initial idea was to create this into some sort of series, and that was Chaim's idea, and it's a brilliant one. And the idea is going to be to go through many stories from Jewish history, particularly through the Tanakh era and just after it, and to have children going through some sort of crisis, something is that they face a challenge, and they need to go back in time to learn from our heroes, from our tzaddikim, the people who in Tanakh or in that area, and then come back and apply it and actually learn from it, and in that way, the viewers also learn that lesson, and that's the idea.
So next up is Yehuda HaMaccabee, but not just the story of Hanukkah. Hanukkah has a message. Tzvi is going to figure out what that message is, just like he figured out what the message was for Shimshon. Because besides learning it as a story or as a history of what happened, there's also Divrei Elokim Chaim. It's something that we have to take and learn from, and messages that we have to learn.
I want to also just mention something that I think is so important. You know, and Tzvi, you can speak of this also, and I'll speak for myself, and maybe Chaim, you as well. I wasn't the best kid in yeshiva, but I had this dream as a kid that one day that we would be able to make videos that were as good as some of the things, the videos that are out there in the world that were for frum people.
Yeah.
They're for frum kids. And like, this is a dream. And to see this actually come alive and just be real and finally be on the screen, it's just really special.
The truth is, we're very grateful to you for
Yeah.
creating that and allowing that. You don't realize that, but you're leading a revolution in not just a revolution, and there's education that comes with it, and I'm extremely grateful that you're doing it. Even if I wasn't writing it, I would be grateful. But I think,
Thank you. But it only happens with a good team. Only happens with good guys. I couldn't. You know, it's one thing to have an idea, and then it's another thing to have great guys that can.
Thank you for joining us for this behind-the-scenes look of Shimshin.